Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc is a game I came away from with mostly positive thoughts. The highlights of the game for me were the Ace Attorney-esque class trials and seeing just how each student reacted to the killing game they were put in. Would they give in to the killing or not, and if so, how and why? Unfortunately, I had some problems with the game as well, like it not being very challenging and the gigantic ass pull of a final villain. That said, Danganronpa still managed to have an interesting mystery that was fun to unravel, and I thought the game ended on a pretty good note with plenty that could still be explored if series creator Kazutaka Kodaka ever decided to return to it in the future. Enter Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair, released in 2012, 2 years after the success of Trigger Happy Havoc in 2010. Originally, this game wasn't planned at all, and the team behind Trigger Happy Havoc actually split up, but Kodaka, wanting to continue the world of Danganronpa, started writing the light novel series Danganronpa Zero, a prequel that would go into detail about Junko Enoshima and Hope's Peak. But while he was in the middle of writing Zero, he was approached by one of the series producers, Yoshinori Terasawa, who would mention the idea of doing a sequel, which Kodaka agreed to. And so in addition to writing Danganronpa Zero, he had Danganronpa 2 to work on as well. But he managed to get both stories done, and to show how close they are, he even goes as far to say you should read Zero before playing Goodbye Despair. You can still enjoy Danganronpa 2 on its own though, and just for now, that's what I want to focus on. I want to see if they made any improvements on a game I already love so much, so why don't we check it out? Let's start off with the title screen, same as last time. I like the new one a lot. This time there aren't portraits of the characters covering the screen, but tiny little pixel arts of them walking around a cute little landscape. You don't have to restart the game to see a different character too, cause every so often they'll get swapped. Everything else here is the same old though. The gallery returns, along with some locked options you can't access until you progress in the actual game, which starts off similarly to the first game in that you're an average student who gets accepted to Hope's Peak. But where Makoto Naegi at least had the talent of being the ultimate lucky student, the new guy has nothing. His name is Hajime Hinata, and I enjoy him as a protagonist more than Makoto. Makoto was a good character in the typical shonen protagonist, overly optimistic and naive way that could keep a story trekking on, but I think Hajime is the more ideal character for a game centered around something so serious. He's more assertive than Makoto ever was, but still doubts himself a lot. He doesn't put up with a lot of shit either. He'll straight up tell characters he doesn't like or trust them. Makoto's naivete and positive attitude has its own place in Danganronpa, but Hajime is more of a pessimist, and I think he's more up my alley because of that. So as we're about to enter Hope's Peak, everything goes glitchy, and we wake up in front of a door that leads into a classroom where all of the other students already are. We don't have a lot of time to get acquainted with them though, because our teacher Usami appears. This time, instead of our teacher being an evil black and white bear who wants us all to kill each other, we have a cute magical rabbit who actually wants everyone to get along. She even uses her magical powers to transport the entire classroom to a tropical resort called Jabberwock Island, and the only thing she wants us to do is have fun with each other. Hajime, so awestruck by everything that just transpired, passes out, and is later awakened by the biggest enigma in the series to date, Nagito Kameda. It's through Nagito and a few other students we learn Monomi has assigned everyone to explore the island and get to know each other. Once you do get acquainted with someone, you'll obtain one of these little things called Hope Fragments out of a full set of 6, and to beat the game, all you have to do is spend enough time with everyone to collect them all. If only it were that easy. Just when things are going well, shit gets dark and all hope is lost. Monokuma appears and he totally usurps Usami of all her power. He even recreates her in his image as Monomi. And yeah, from here the killing game actually starts. It's the same Danganronpa we know and love. Kill another student, don't get caught, and prove your innocence to live. The only major difference is that the killing game takes place on an island instead of a school. I don't know if Jabberwock Island is for me though, man. It loses a lot of that creepy tension that was always present in Hope's Peak. In contrast to the original game, where we were trapped inside the dark, tight hallways of this school without so much as a window to even see the outside world, we have more freedom than ever on Jabberwock Island. So much freedom to the point where Monokuma doesn't even stop the students from trying to escape anymore. That miserable atmosphere was reflected in the characters so well in Trigger Happy Havoc too. They were distrustful of each other and kept their distance, usually only reuniting when they were trying to find a way out of the school. Meanwhile, in Danganronpa 2, that's not the case for a majority of the game. Characters are always having parties or going swimming together. I would say Danganronpa 1 characters felt like victims who happened to form genuine bonds and friendships out of their circumstance. Danganronpa 2 characters feel like they were already lifelong buddies, and this is just another situation they happen to currently be in. I have a harder time believing Danganronpa 2's cast wants to escape this killing game as much as Danganronpa 1's cast wanted to escape Hope's Peak. And who can blame them when they're stranded on a fun and bright island? I mean, I don't hate that Kodaka at least tried to change up the tone in Danganronpa 2. That tense claustrophobic atmosphere was already executed so well in Danganronpa 1. This tropical setting just comes nowhere near as close to working for me as the abandoned school did. And speaking outside of Jabberwock Island's atmosphere, I just don't think it's as good a location for the killing game. There are too many outside influences on this island that play a part in the motivations of these murders. For example, there's a disease in this game that's supposed to drive you crazy enough to commit murder, and it's carried by insects native to Jabberwock Island. Also, here's a building specifically designed to starve all the students until one of them commits murder. Why force these characters to kill in situations they can't control? One of the things I liked about Trigger Happy Havoc was how natural the murders were. Some of them came from a desire to leave the school. Some of them came from regrettable flashes of anger or fear. They just get rid of that with all these uncontrollable factors on Jabberwock Island in Danganronpa 2. Taking out the fact that these murderers operated with their own independence was a really bad call in my opinion. There are some things I like about this island though, like this time around instead of different floors being blocked off with gates like we had in Hope's Peak, there's Monokuma's monolithic monobeasts blocking bridges to different parts of the island. Monokuma feels more imposing with these gigantic robots under his control, and the executions return larger than ever due to taking place on a free and open island. The other changes we're introduced to now are minor, like the brand new Tamagotchi minigame where you can win some Mono coins to play on the Mono Gachapon machine which returns. And there's these new hidden Monokumas you can find all throughout the game that keeps you observant. There's also a brand new leveling system in Danganronpa 2. You level up by doing everything, just walking around or interacting with objects in the environment or talking to other characters gives you experience. The more levels you have, the more skills you can equip for the class trials. It's the stuff that gives you more health or extended time or damage reduction. Speaking of the class trials, they've had a bit of a revamp. These class trials are definitely the part of Danganronpa I look forward to most, so I'm glad to see they've had more thought put into them. One of my biggest complaints with the last game's trials was that the cases were too easy to solve, but I found they're a lot more challenging in this game. You're no longer just waiting to hear that one funny piece of dialogue that clearly goes against the evidence, but there's more emphasis on you figuring out the how and where this time around. Most of the twists and turns and reveals are believable too and keep the trials going on so long they need intermissions now to let the player take a break. The minigames return of course. Non-stop debates play as normal, with you being able to shoot the contradictions with the right truth bullets, but Danganronpa 2 has the addition of you being able to back up something another student says with the right truth bullets as well. I like that change. You don't always have to be proving someone wrong. There's also a new sub-minigame to the non-stop debates called Rebuttal Showdowns, where characters will call you out when you present evidence and you have to prove why what you said was right. It plays the same as the non-stop debates. Wait until the right text comes up and hit it with a truth bullet. Logic Dive is another great new minigame. You surf through this 3D environment, dodging obstacles and answering multiple choice questions that help Hajime piece events together. It reminds me of that Flash game Run. Anyone know what I'm talking about? A couple of the minigames get a little shaky in quality from here though. Hangman's Gambit is back with a makeover. They even refer to it as improved Hangman's Gambit now. You still shoot at these individual letters to spell something out like before, except you have to match two letters together now by stocking one of them and letting it connect with another one before you're allowed to shoot it. If two of the wrong letters connect, then you'll take damage. The new Hangman's Gambit is not a bad idea conceptually, but it doesn't work so well in actual gameplay. The game either operates on turtle speed, taking forever for the two letters you need to shoot to show up, or it overwhelms you with so many letters on screen at once that you can't help but take damage as you scramble to find the right letters you need. What I think would have really helped is letting the player choose which box they wanted to put a letter in instead of going through the word in its exact order. The rhythm minigame returns as well too, except it's called Panic Talk Action instead of Bullet Time Battle. You don't have to time each button press to the individual beats anymore. You just hold one beat over multiple beats and let go whenever you want to, as long as you're still on beat. So all they did was make an already easy minigame even easier. And last but not least, the closing arguments return. They're the same as they are in Trigger Happy Havoc, just fit the right events into the right gaps to recap the timeline of the murder. They throw some fake ones in there too to mix you up. But despite my complaints about Hangman's Gambit and the Panic Talk action minigame, I am a big fan of the new Clash Trials. They're more challenging like I wanted them to be for the most part. And by the way, the students of Jabberwock Island aren't completely useless in the Clash Trials like the students of Hope's Peak were. They actually do a good job of helping Hajime solve the murders, not leaving all the detective work up to him. No one's holding back evidence or crucial information for arbitrary reasons like making the Clash Trials more interesting or letting you solve the murder because you need closure either. No, they all contribute to solving the case. Hell, in one trial Nagito even starts doing the closing argument. And since I'm talking about the characters, they've seen some improvements too. I guess I can't put off talking about the actual students of Jabberwock Island anymore, so let's do a rundown again. You already know Hajime, the protagonist of the story. His talent is currently unknown, and like I said before, I prefer him over Makoto from the last game. Besides him, there's Chiaki, the ultimate gamer. She's one of the more intelligent students and ends up being one of Hajime's closest allies, sort of like Kyoko from the last game. The elephant in the room is Fat Byakuya though. You gotta wonder why he's back at Hope's Peak. Could this game possibly be a prequel? He takes it upon himself to become the leader of the group and try to help everyone escape the island. Here's a fan favorite, Ibuki Miyota, the ultimate musician. She's a scene girl with a bunch of lol so random jokes included. I think you can tell this game was released in 2012. And another embarrassing character is Gundam Tanaka, the ultimate breeder. Not like that. He has a strong connection with animals and even carries around these 4 cute little hamsters he calls the Devas of Destruction, believing they and himself have some divine powers or something. Gundam is a chunibyo, which is a Japanese term that basically describes adolescents who embarrassingly believe they have powers or some esoteric knowledge or just something about them that makes them special. It's cute as a kid and something I think most of us go through, but you have to get out of that I'm the main character phase eventually. There's also Mahiru, the ultimate photographer. I didn't really care for her. She's hard on the dudes and believes it's their duty to protect the women, and she's quick to scold them for every little thing they do. But I guess I warmed up to her a little bit when she was revealed to be a very caring person later on. I can't stand the ultimate mechanic Kazuichi though. He looks tough, but he's actually a huge coward, whining about every little thing. He's obsessed with Sonia Nevermind, the ultimate princess too. Whenever these two are in a scene together, he'll make some lowbrow sex joke and it gets very old, very quick. You know, the last game had Toko, who was obsessed with Byakuya, but it was funny there because that chick was psychotic. Kazuichi just comes off as a full creep. And there's a point where he tries to stalk and peep on Sonia too, going so far as to recruit Hajime to be his wingman so he has an excuse to be near her. To be fair though, he has his uses. He designs a video calling device at one point and is constantly looking for parts to make a ship or something to get off the island. He definitely comes off as the person most determined to leave. And back to Sonia, I guess. She's the princess of a foreign nation, but isn't a very regal person outside of her appearance. She's into researching dark stuff like serial killers and whatnot. I really like her relationship with Gundam too. She buys into all the stupid shit he says like he's been to hell and has demonic powers. These guys have a fun back and forth. We also have Teru, the ultimate chef, another pervert whose every other line is a sex joke. Then there's Mikan, the ultimate nurse. She's one of the more useful characters, being able to perform autopsies on dead victims and nurse the injured ones back to health. She's extremely pitiful though, constantly being bullied and crying at every little irritation. Also, she's a fan service character, accidentally finding herself in compromising situations on more than one occasion. They just went all out with the sex appeal in this game. Characters are always showing cleavage or making middle school level penis jokes. And like, look, I'm a degenerate too, but have some class about it. The first game had its moments, but it was more tasteful than this. Alongside the most basic tee-hee sex joke characters, Danganronpa 2 has some of the most well-thought, complex characters in the entire series. A great example being Fuyuhiko, the ultimate Yakuza. Just like my favorite character Mondo from Trigger Happy Havoc, he's a hard-ass and he's quick to anger, but he lacks those same morals that Mondo had that made him a redeemable character. Fuyuhiko genuinely doesn't care who lives or dies, but something tragic happens to him mid-game that forces him to change his mindset and try to become become a better person. He goes through a redemption arc basically, and everything about him, from his backstory to his evolution to his ultimate payoff, is some of the best storytelling in the franchise. Baby Gangsta is by far the best boy. Then there's Peko Peko, the ultimate swordswoman. She never goes anywhere without her bamboo blade. She kinda reminded me of Kyoko and Celeste in how cold she could be, but it wasn't out of malice or anything, just the lack of her knowing how to express her feelings. Another great character is Nekomaru, the ultimate team manager. He's a very bold and loud person, but he's also great at keeping everyone's morale up. Then there's Akane, the ultimate gymnast. She's probably the dumbest character of the bunch, only ever thinking about food and fighting, and the only time she's able to form coherent thoughts is when thinking about anything that concerns those two things. There's a little shit called Hiyoko. She's the ultimate traditional dancer. I don't like her. She's always exhibiting some little psycho behavior like killing animals or bullying Mikan, and then she hides behind her cute, innocent, childlike appearance. She grows close to Mahiru and shows that she does have a sentimental side underneath everything, but she's still a piece of shit as far as I'm concerned. And finally we have Nagito, the ultimate lucky student. Same talent as Makoto Naegi. He's a great wildcard to the class trials and story, often siding with the Blackened or doing some other diabolical things for his own twisted but well-intended reasons. Nagito loves hope and believes true hope can only come out in the face of true despair, which is why he does all the villain stuff he does. I think he has a really nice arc too. You see him go from revering the other ultimate students to despising everything about them. He's manipulative and always seems to be planning 10 steps ahead. I gotta say, I really prefer the new students. They're more of a mixed bag in terms of likability compared to Danganronpa 1's mostly decent cast, but I still found the characters in Danganronpa 2 more enjoyable, for a couple reasons really. The first one being this game gets more mileage out of these guys being ultimate students. In Trigger Happy Havoc, the students' talents mostly just shape their personalities, and rarely did they have an actual need for the ultimate fanfic writer, or the ultimate swimming pro, or something like that. But these guys have talents that can actually be useful in the class trials, like Mikan's nursing abilities and Mahiru's photography. There's also those practical talents, like Kazuichi being able to fix anything technical, granted he has the parts. Even the murderers take advantage of their talents and utilize them in some way for their kills. Also, Goodbye Despair cares more about fleshing out the individual characters. The go-to example would be Fuyuhiko because of his whole arc, but before I go on praising Danganronpa 2 for having amazing character development entirely, let me just say a lot of them don't get the Fuyuhiko treatment. A lot of them don't go through a gigantic arc that changes their entire character for the better, but this game does have more of those moments that gives everyone a little more depth. Moments where even the dogshit characters like Teru Teru and Hiyoko can justify why they are the way they are, or at least become someone you can feel sympathy for. I'm not talking about the completely optional free time events where you can bond with other students to get to know them better either. I'm talking about unskippable parts of the game crucial to the story. I just appreciate these small moments that builds everyone's character into someone you would care that much more about. Trigger Happy Havoc's characters are still likable and even had these moments of humanization as well, but they were rarer, and I would say half of those characters ended as the one-dimensional anime tropes they were introduced as. In Goodbye Despair, I would say maybe 1 or 2 characters don't go through some kind of growth or have their backstories explored. And speaking of backstories being explored, it's getting to that time for me to talk about the game's story again, so if you don't want to be spoiled on Danganronpa 2, go to this time that's currently on the screen. Okay, so same as last time, there's a greater mystery to be solved here by the students on who actually put them in the killing game and why they're here in the first place. But some of those questions actually get answered pretty early on this time. They learn early on that they've gone through a time skip and lost all their memories of their time spent in the school. When I said the story of Goodbye Despair starts off similarly to Trigger Happy Havoc earlier, I meant it. Monokuma even pokes fun at how much the story is being rehashed here. They also learned that they're not only being monitored by a group called the Future Foundation, but may have a traitor from the Future Foundation in their midst. Nagito, being the most determined person to out the traitor, dies in a convoluted but successful murder-suicide plan, and it turns out to be Chiaki. As Chiaki explains it, the Future Foundation aren't the bad guys, and she genuinely grew a liking to everyone, but was incapable of outing herself as the traitor. Also, Monomi was her partner, and after Monokuma executes the both of them, there are only a few survivors left. Hajime, Sonia, Kazuichi, Akane, and Fuyuhiko. Shit gets weird after Chiaki and Monomi die though. Dead students reappear, everything goes glitchy again, and Monokuma of all people wanting the killing game to end decides one final class trial will be held where we'll actually be on his side. Then as the final trial commences, Monokuma drops the bombshell that Jabberwock Island and our entire time spent on it has been a lie. All of these students were actually in a simulation by the Future Foundation called the Neo World Program. But before Monokuma goes too far, a member of Future Foundation appears. It's Makoto Naegi. He explains the reason why the students all had to be put in the Neo World Program was to rehabilitate them from being the ultimate despairs. The ultimate despairs. Yeah, so during their time in the school, before the time skip, they were all influenced by Junko's silver tongue and became just as sick and twisted as Junko and the rest of the world outside of Hope's Peak. Remember, as Junko explains at the end of Trigger Happy Havoc, it was an ideological thing that turned everyone to despair, but now it feels like something much more infectious and uncontrollable than that. Danganronpa gets pretty dark here, man. These people love Junko like a god. They took parts of her dead body and grafted them to themselves. They starved themselves to death. They did some other shit with Junko's body I'm not gonna repeat in order to continue her legacy. And this takes us back to the beginning of the game. The Neo World program plan actually worked as intended at the start, with the hope fragments Monomi tasked everyone with collecting as signs of progress on the road of these ultimate despair, slowly but surely regaining their humanity. But little did anyone know Junko was still alive in AI form as alter ego Junko thanks to some ultimate despair shenanigans. And like a virus, she would take over the Neo World program to start the killing game as Monokuma. And I know what you're thinking, if this is all virtual, doesn't that mean the dead students outside should still technically be alive? Well, they are kind of, but they remain comatose, and there is a way for them to come back, but they would be mere husks under Junko's control, essentially giving her multiple bodies to spread despair with. And from here, the survivors are forced to make a choice. Either follow what Junko tells you to do and graduate from the killing game, allowing all the survivors to leave the virtual world and the dead students to return as Junko, or follow what the Future Foundation suggests you do and cause a forced shutdown of the game, which would put an end to alter ego Junko, but also make all the survivors of the killing game lose all their progress towards becoming better people. It's too much for poor little Hajime and friends to decide which is right, so Goodbye Despair follows in Trigger Happy Havoc's footsteps again and reveals the main character's real talent is the ultimate hope. Then he uses that power of hope to bond everyone together in another cheesy moment of friendship, and they ultimately get rid of Junko but still activate the forced shutdown. And so Hajime and Co have forged their own path with an uncertain future, but one they can remain hopeful of. I guess getting rid of Junko also gets rid of whatever would have made them go back to being ultimate despairs. Also, the dead students may still be alive, who knows. It's okay. There's a lot of details I left out, but it's almost the exact same ending as the first games. Hajime and Makoto are both Deus Ex Machinas that use the power of hope to put down the big bad, but I guess it's more artistic in this game and doesn't feel as contrived because of Hajime's past. In fact, I would say a lot of the twists in this game are more believable than Trigger Happy Havoc's, like the fact that the entire game took place in a virtual world was built up to since the very start, and even the fact that the students were ultimate despairs had some foreshadowing by Mikan when she regained her memory halfway through the game. And since I'm talking about memories, even that massive plot hole on how Junko was able to take everyone's memories was kind of answered in Danganronpa 0. Basically, it was super duper advanced brain surgery developed by Junko's dead ex-boyfriend. Hey, that works for me. I like that the killing game actually has a reason to happen this time too. Junko's not forcing everyone to kill each other just because she likes it. She gets something out of the students killing each other by taking control of the dead students' comatose bodies. And she's forced to follow the rules and not just kill everyone because she needs the survivors to press graduate. Now, with all that said, I think Trigger Happy Havoc's story is a lot more digestible than this one, and I wouldn't be mad if anyone said they preferred it. I'm glad to see some plot holes get valid answers, and I like seeing the world of Danganronpa expanded. And I think everything builds up into something great and all that, but I found my eyes glazed over multiple times throughout this game. I was skipping a lot of the flavor text and whatnot that should have been fun to read just to get back to the real story. Like I said, there's a lot I left out about the Future Foundation, and Hajime actually being Izuru Kamakura, the founder of Hope's Peak, and Chiaki actually being a program inside the Neo World program, and Nagito just Nagito, all of which is interesting because it ties into Danganronpa 3 and other spin-off material which effectively ends the Hope's Peak saga of Danganronpa, but I just wanted the game to be over more and more with each little world-building detail they kept adding. I think I'm in the camp that prefers Trigger Happy Havoc's simple story over this one. As far as I can tell, Goodbye Despair is just as beloved by the fans as Trigger Happy Havoc is, and I understand why. It's essentially more of the same things that were so great about the first game. The unique art style, the black comedy, and the killing game all return, but Danganronpa 2 goes even further beyond. The class trials are more intricate, the characters are deeper, and while I still don't prefer Jabberwock Island's bright and cheerful atmosphere to Hope's Peak, which was more gloomy and depressing, I can see the appeal of this setting. There's more variety in this game too, like 1 second you're in this dystopian city, next thing you know you're in an amusement park. The executions are more creative too, and this game just throws in the most out there shit. Like one of the motives Monokuma presents to try and get everyone to kill each other is a Twilight Syndrome game of all things. Oh, and hey, since I'm talking about games within a game, that management mode that was in Trigger Happy Havoc returns here after you beat the game, along with the new minigame that's slowly unlocked as you progress through the story. Here you play as Monomi and defeat these Monobees one by one. I love how they turn the recurring gag of Monomi taking these guys down after each chapter into an actual game. I might as well mention Danganronpa If too, the special short story you unlock after beating the game. This story is a what-if scenario in which Makoto Naegi gets an escape button at the start of the Hope's Peak killing game. It's a fun read. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to say about Danganronpa 2. I enjoyed it. It's still a little rough around the edges in the class trials, and I really am not the biggest fan of the story. And I would rather play Trigger Happy Havoc before Goodbye Despair again. But I do think Danganronpa 2 improves on Danganronpa 1 in enough ways that I ultimately see it as the better game. But now I'm gonna be honest. I'm getting kind of tired of Danganronpa quicker than I thought I would. These games are fun, but they're very long to get through and fatiguing, taking a few days of non-stop playing to finish, and then another couple weeks of writing a script, editing a video, blah blah blah. So I'm glad the next Danganronpa game we'll take a look at is gonna shake the formula up a bit by not being a visual novel at all. I think you'll like it. Or hate it. I don't know. We'll see. Hi everyone, thanks for watching my video review of Danganronpa 2. Thanks for all the support on my previous Danganronpa video as well. It did better than I expected it to, as in out of the blue upload on a channel I haven't posted on in years. Please, play the games on your own if you haven't and they interest you at all. But once again, thanks you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.